Welcome back to Askewed Reviews. And this entire week I'm doing Father's Day films. And today I'm doing the 1995 movie Grumpier Old Men. Here's your trivia question for today. What is John's Halloween costume that Jacob borrows to talk to Melanie? The answer will be at the end of this episode. So, in this sequel to the first film, we pick up a few years later with John and Max. At this point, John and Ariel are now married, and Max is still by himself. But it looks like Melanie and Jacob are now also engaged to be married. John and Max are back to being friends again, and they've even partnered up to help put together Jacob and Melanie's wedding. Since their friend Chuck passed away in the last film, it appears that his bait shop is finally being sold off, and it's being transformed into a restaurant. The new owners happen to be Maria and her mother. Both John and Max are upset that the bait shop is being changed into a restaurant, so they decide to use all of their dirty tricks instead of against each other on Maria and her restaurant. As this new rivalry heats up, it appears that something else is heating up as Max has been growing feelings towards Maria, and she might be having those feelings back towards him. Now, on the other side of the relationship coin, it appears that Jacob and Melanie might actually be having some issues and they might be calling off the wedding. This, of course, causes both John and Max to start up their old rivalry against each other once again. So, will Melanie and Jacob be able to patch things back up? And will Max and John finally be able to be friends again? So, the original plan was to bring back Donald Petrie to be the director of the sequel. But due to the fact that he had a flop in the movie Richie Rich, he wanted to take some time off. So they instead brought in Howard Deutsch. Of course, Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau reprised their roles as John and Max. In this sequel film, this would be the eighth time that the two of those actors would pair together. Including both of the Grumpy Old Men movies, they have been in a total of 10 films together. Burgess Meredith played Grandpa Gustafson in both of the Grumpy Old Men movies. This would unfortunately be his last film, as he would pass away within 2 years after the film came out. Sophia Loren was brought in to play Maria in this film, as they originally were thinking of having her play Ariel in the first film. Anne Morgan Gilbert plays the character of Mama, but what's funny is she's actually only 6 years older than Sophia Loren. If you weren't aware, both Sophia Loren and Anne Margaret were actually sex symbols in the 1960s. And Daryl Hannah, who plays the character of Melanie, was a sex symbol in the 1980s. Two other people that appear in this film that you might recognize are Max Wright and Geraldo Rivera. Katie Saginaw reprises her role as Allie. You may not know this, but the fish that John and Max are trying to catch is called Catfish Hunter for a reason. It's named after a baseball Hall of Fame pitcher named Jim Catfish Hunter. The idea of having Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau's characters' children get married would be used again in the film The Odd Couple 2. There were actually plans for a third film called Grumpiest Old Men. In this one, it would have involved one of Maria's ex-husbands that would have shown back up in the picture, stating the fact that Maria and Max's marriage is false, as he and Maria never actually had their divorce finalized. Now, apparently, this new character would have been played by Marcello Mastroianni, but unfortunately, he did pass away, and instead of recasting, they just decided to drop the whole idea. So, just like the first film, this movie is filmed and takes place in Minnesota. So, when it comes to the film Grumpier Old Men, I do like this movie. I feel it's just a little weaker than the previous one. Not in really a bad way, but not much has changed. It didn't do anything that really made it a whole lot better. I still found it funny, and I still did enjoy it, but there was just something there that wasn't there to make it as good or better. So I'm going to give this one a 3 out of 5. And since this film felt very similar to the first one, I'm really just going to give the same recommendations of other movies to check out, with Out to Sea, The Odd Couple, The War with Grandpa, and The Great Outdoors. Now it's time for the trivia question from the beginning of this episode. What is John's Halloween costume that Jacob borrows to talk to Melanie? So that costume apparently is a polar bear. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Askewed Reviews, And if there's a movie you'd like to see get a review, just mention it in the comments.